You know, every offseason, so many of these teams change their identity completely. Their roster, there's plenty of turnover, some randomness, some luck hits them as well. And we didn't have a team go worst to first this year. The 49ers were close. They were second worst in the NFC West. But now is the time to talk about the teams that were bad in the NFL, the ones that did finish worst in their division, which ones we think have the best chance. We aren't saying are, but have a best chance of reaching the playoffs. Ian Hardis, why don't you start us off?
So here are the 8 teams we're picking from. Dolphins, Bengals, Jaguars, Chargers, Redskins, Lions, Panthers, and my pick, the Arizona Cardinals. I think all of us here were big-time Team Kyler coming out. It was more or less a successful year. You know, had some ups and downs. Took a league-high 48 sacks. Big problem with him was just, seeing the pressure, kind of collapsing under it. When he did get outside it, he can make some plays. Obviously, we saw what he could do with his feet. But I think it's reasonable to expect a year 2 bump. He played better down the stretch. We've seen a year 2 bump with a lot of good quarterbacks. I still believe Kyler's going to be a good quarterback. What did Lamar Jackson just do? I'm not saying he's going to take that quite of a leap, but if I'm going to bet on a team going from worst to first, it's going to be at the quarterback position. And I think Kingsbury, even if the pass offense wasn't incredible, this team still led the league in yards before contact per rush, even though they don't have a great offensive line. A lot of that to do is with Kingsbury and just what mobile quarterbacks do for an offense in general. So just real quick, I think the offense has a chance to be great. Defense, you got Patrick Peterson, Chandler Jones, Jordan Hicks. There's at least playmakers there.
Yeah.
I know it's a tough division, but this team could be good.
I have no questions about the offense because even while throwing to Pharaoh Cooper and Damiere Byrd.
Questions?
No, I still think that Cliff and Kyler and company can do a good enough job to win football games offensively.
They got to change something down the field.
Biggest question is that Steve Keim is the one to improve this roster because he's had 4 or 5 years in the job and it's still a
Steve Keim's ripe
roster.
to lose a power struggle. He's going to be a guy forced out for a Cliff Kingsbury guy in a year or two. And you kind of the problem is the buzzsaw division. Yeah. I mean, you have this is as tough as a division could possibly get. Because, Sean McVay is not going anywhere. The 49ers are not going anywhere. Pete Carroll's greater than its sum of its parts roster is not going anywhere. And the Cardinals are going to be better. They're going to take a step forward. It's hard to see.
They're going to need to, be a 10-6 division winner with a bunch of 8 and 8 teams.
I'm interested to see what playmakers on the perimeter they add, because obviously that was one of their weakest components.
Year 2, Andy Isabella?
Well, and again, it is very easy to say what's not going to happen with these teams, but I think you made a very good case of what could happen, especially Kyler. That rookie year, he showed that he just elevates people around him. Pat, why don't you hit us with yours?
Well, we're picking from a weak crop of teams as we just...
really like the 8 worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers, which we talked about them in a different video. They have a lot of serious questions. We don't even know for sure. I think it will be Cam Newton, a quarterback, but you have the best coaching hire, in my opinion. You have the best coordinating hire, in my opinion. By definition, you have a last place schedule. And then you have a division with just a lot of questions. The Saints, we're pretty sure Drew Brees will be back, but will Drew Brees be back? We have a Falcons team just kind of stuck in their perennial neutral. And then we have the Bucks. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Was not a great overall team last year. And this is a division that could be a very competitive division, but a very up for grabs division. And the Panthers are not as far away as a 5-11 last place record would suggest in my opinion.
Something interesting about the Panthers is that you look, and the Niners and the Chiefs were the 2 fastest teams by NFL Next Gen stats this year. Perhaps coincidentally, whatever the case, in the Super Bowl now. And then Matt Rule, part of that sports science program he developed at Baylor is the fact that he tracked players practicing at 19 miles an hour and then carried over practices as such. He's like, oh, he was injured, but he recovered at 19 miles per hour. So that's the way we're going to recover and keep these guys in a training regimen. So I do wonder if speed is part of this building program, whatever he's creating right now.
Yeah, it's not very often, too, that you have a team that's worse in their division with Christian McCaffrey, a 1,000 player in the backfield, and DJ Moore, who took a massive step forward.
A specimen.
In year 2? That's a great basis and foundation to start your offense with.
Just got to help the defense. We've talked all year, it's better to have a good pass defense than a good run defense, especially in today's NFL. With that said, the Panthers and Jaguars were just atrocious at run defense, and it really just kept them out of some games that they could have otherwise been in.
John Daigle, which team might go worst to first in their own division?
I actually do like the Lions. I'm not just picking them because they were one of the worst teams in the league. I think the NFC North could potentially crumble.
there
Like
for the
the
taking.
Packers, 13 wins, yes, but 6-1 in one-score games. We know those regress year to year. The Vikings, we discussed this in another video, but there are a lot of reasons for the Vikings offense to decline following Kevin Stefanski's departure. And then you look at the Bears, Mitchell Trubisky under center, obviously question marks there. The Lions were they're 3-4-1 under Stafford, but a frisky 3-4-1. They were fun to watch play, and we had our concerns about Darrell Bevell, but that offense, Stafford paced for 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns, his highest mark since 2011.
Yeah.
The fact is he just got injured, and that back injury does seem serious. It lingered over the second half of the season, but if he's healthy, they're actually like an explosive team. They just need their defense to stay healthy. Those defensive injuries killed them.
Yeah, and Trey Flowers played well, and they paid him a whole bunch of money, but I don't see really a cornerstone on any other part of their defense.
Darius Slay probably walks.
Darius Slay.
Yeah, I mean, he also has been rumored to not be on the team in 2020.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be there.
That'd be a mistake.
Severely lacking defensive talent, like severely.
Yeah.
But Matthew Stafford, but he could have probably come back in the second half of the season if they had been competitive. And so the offense, I mean, we talked earlier in a different video about Jameis Winston playing a different sport, throwing the ball down the field way more than the modern norm. That's what Matthew Stafford and the Lions are doing last year, taking advantage of their downfield weapons. And, they still have T.J. Hawkinson, who they barely used.
Yep.
They could be one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. It's just Matt Patricia, he designs game plans that other coaches steal to win Super Bowls. But whatever they're doing, whatever their philosophy is when it comes to personnel is not
It
working.
just didn't seem like they had depth. And so when the starters got hurt, then the backups just weren't starting caliber players at all. And
I was about to say, I wouldn't say they're talent deficient. They just did anti-Parcells, where Parcells always worried about the 53rd man on the roster. They don't care about the 32nd man on the roster.
Guys, let me paint a picture here, okay? Tom Brady leaves the New England Patriots. The Bills' defense takes a step back, and Josh Allen's mistakes matter more in 2020 than they did in 2019. And finally, Adam Gase is still coaching the New York Jets. Is it wild to think that the Miami Dolphins make the playoffs? This is a team that has a number 5 pick, number 18, number 26, number 39, number 56, number 68. $91 million in cap space with really no one to re-sign heading into the offseason. You can reconstruct that offensive line with Anthony Costanzo, Brandon Sheriff, Andrews Pete, Dennis Kelly, Quentin Spain, whoever you want to bring up. You've also had players like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams step up in a team that Brian Flores has won way more games than they should have this year. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if they nail all of those picks, if they nail all of their signings, if you match that with Brian Flores' coaching and motivational tactics and bring Chan Gailey back, a man who is like a decade ahead of the rest of the NFL, I could see the Miami Dolphins make the playoffs.
I feel like you're just 1 year early on this.
Yes. Do you have the True Detective conspiracy board?
Possibly. Just the red lines across the whiteboard.
I want it to happen as well, and they set themselves up with those draft picks and cap space for this reason to rebuild. I just still think it's 1 or 2 years away.
Also, how dare you for not saying Mike Gesicki?
There's just too many. It's going to be a wide open division, I think. But there's just too many. There's going to be too many new moving parts for the Miami Dolphins. It's going to be a new quarterback, a new starting running back, a new offensive coordinator, basically an entire brand new defense. It's just going to be, I think, too many new parts to overcome. I think Ian said probably a year early on that.
But at least they'll have Fitzpatrick back 1 more year.
Well, and look, I know the Patriots weren't the world beater we grew used to, but they still comfortably won that division. I know they did lose in
Can
week
they do that with
17.
Jared Stidham?
Oh, I forgot you did.
No, they'll
say
do it with
Brady's
Andy Dalton.
leaving.
And make the world the darkest timeline ever.
Or Cam Newton? We'll get to that in a moment.
You know what? I think they could still win the division with Jared Stidham.
Interesting. All right. That does it for us. Again, those were our picks for the worst to first in their own divisions. If you want to check out more of our videos, go over to Rotoworld.com or NBCSports.com.